Hey, coffee experts. Those of you running independent coffee shops, you're always looking for ways that you can drop your costs. And we here at the Coffee Experts Club really understand that. And so we've started something called Indie Coffee Coalition. And what it's designed to do is to drop your costs on two of the things that you're probably experiencing the highest sales volume in your store. And that is energy drink and frat mix. Those two line items, we've created our own products and are offering you those products at a reduced cost so that you can cut out the Red Bull of America. You can cut out the main lines of energy drinks that you're doing and serve your own energy drink at a reduced cost on a line item that you're probably already making a lot of sales on anyway. The best way that you can grow sales is by dropping your costs and maintaining a current volume. So check us out at indiecoffee.co and we'll love to tell you more there.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are three coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-thru openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
Oh man, how you boys doing today? Are you having a good day?
Good, yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Weather in Southern Oregon's nice, man. It's a little crisp, a little sunny. Feel like it's just my
Leaves are falling, getting orange out there.
yeah. Love it, love it, love it. Dude, TikTok is such an anomaly, bro. I feel like I get lost in that vortex for days if I'm not careful, just because like a fall video will come up and it's like all the fall colors and it's like mountains or whatever. But if you watch TikTok too long in any one video, they just start feeding it to you. So then it's like I get like 6 or 7 of those, and then I look back and an hour's gone by and I'm just lost in all these mountain like songs, good energy, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Yeah. I love fall. If you're listening to this episode on any other episode but fall, just know this. Fall is a radical time to be in Southern Oregon if you want to come pay me a visit. It's a great place.
Mm.
Oh, but just got back from Belize. That was pretty cool. Was there for the last 9 days. Let me tell you something that doesn't happen in Belize. Fall. We got a little bit of rain on our way out, which in a golf cart, man, that is an adventure. Like there's no way not to get a soaked butt when you are driving a golf cart in the rain.
Especially the rain in Belize, too, because it's not like it's a light sprinkle.
And it's misgiving, right? Because it's like, oh, it looks like a little light sprinkle. Downpour, it just like dumps on you, and then you're in the middle of this deluge, and the streets there just flood like a mofo. There's no way around it. Like you're just like mobbing through water, and I'm like, I don't know what this does to the underbelly of this sucker, but I hope to God we don't end up stuck in one of these puddles because I do not want to get out in knee deep water right now. So
It was funny when I got down there, too. I was like, man, these aren't golf carts. These are like 4x4s with a golf cart on top. I was like, it makes sense now why they're so tall and so huge. This You've got just lakes of water sitting around.
it is crazy. It is crazy. But anyway, it was cool to be down there, and it kind of feeds into something we're going to talk about today. So if you're tuning in today, this is the best place to jump in. If you're thinking about starting coffee, you know somebody that's thinking about starting coffee, this is the spot you want to be here at the Coffee Experts Club because it's an opportunity for us to lean in and give you killer insights from being under the hood of a lot of different coffee brands. And we've seen what works, we've seen what doesn't work, and then we've applied the best of those things and kind of come up with our own spin. So tune in here. It's a great spot for it. And then as always, we always talk about, if you want to deep dive on any of these topics, coffeeexpertsacademy.com, where we go into 35 modules of deep content, an hour long on each one of these topics. So you can dive in deep there. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely check that out. But today we're going to talk about, we've been talking a lot about new locations and the profitability of those locations and just thinking through some of those key components. And something I'd like to talk about today, because we talk about drive-thrus a lot here, that's what we're all about, is car times and the importance of car times. Because I think, in all honesty, it's one of those areas where not a bunch of people talk about it. You don't necessarily see a bunch of people like emphasize it, but honestly, it can make or break the profitability of your stand. I was talking to a kid that I know that's in coffee just yesterday, and she was saying that the stand that she works at, she can just tell like urgency is not important to her boss. And I think that feels really good. And we're like, no, we're super customer centric. We just like to shoot the shit and talk to people and make them feel valuable. But you got to realize there's a cost to that too. And you got to come into a really knowing what your costs are, because I feel like that can make or break a coffee stand. So anyway, let's talk about it, boys. What are your thoughts on that?
Yep. I mean, back in our day, the first core value of our company was speed, and then it was service. It was getting it out quick with a good hello and a good goodbye and a good hey, how's it going, John? But if John has to wait 6 minutes for a cup of coffee, John doesn't care what you have to say. It's like, just let me out of this drive-through. I think speed, especially in our industry, is the most important because if it doesn't matter how good your product is, you could be giving them a free coffee, the best coffee
Right.
you've ever made. It could be free, and if they've waited there for 15 minutes to get it, they'll be like, "Dude, I'm late for work now. Thanks."
Yeah, 100%. I remember driving by George Washington, there at Richland, and just like, if the line's too long, people are not going to get in that line, and
Mhm.
they don't know consistently how fast you can move through it because even at optimal car times, like if that thing is stacked 15 cars deep, like Richland could do, it's still
Mhm.
going to take a long time to get through that thing, let alone if your car times suck. If your car times suck, people are just like banking on being there for a heck of a long time. And if you're trying to get to work, or you're trying to drop your kid off at school, or you're trying to get back to get your kid from school, like we need to be able to help people to understand, no, no, when you check in here, we're going to be moving through. So yes, we're going to know your name. Yes, we're going to know your drink. Those two things are like non-negotiable, but also we want you to know when you come here, you're going to get running pretty quick.
Yep. Yep.
Unless you really start looking at it, you don't know what you don't know. I remember, boss man Jimmy, my first manager, used to say, "You think you're moving fast enough, move faster." But until you really start tracking any of those metrics or what that means, there's a whole slew of things you don't know that you need to work on. Or how can you give a barista actionable steps if you don't track it? Or how can you hold somebody accountable if there's really no system in place? We'd say make more room in the drive through for more cars, and they'll show up. What ended up happening as we got faster, our lines stayed long, but it was new cars we could fit in there because instead of 2-minute cars, we were doing a minute 45, and then we were doing a minute 30. And, sometimes we'd be able to do a minute. We'd have contests. If we do a minute, a whole hour and see how it goes. And in some of the shops, we'd have enough cars to fill that hour. It didn't matter how fast we were.
Yeah, I mean, we resurrected locations just based off of speed alone. I mean, we'd make the mistake of putting in a manager who wasn't focused on speed, and those car times would start getting higher and higher. And then sure enough, people would be like, exactly like you said, like, I don't have time to stop there. We'd come in and be like, hey guys, we're focusing on speed this month. Let's get this car times out faster. And lo and behold, people start showing up again. And that location starts, turning the bigger profit again because just the mere fact that I can rely on you, that if I'm running 10 minutes behind on my way to work or 10 minutes late to drop my kids off at school or something like that, and I know I've got time to get a coffee because I'm not going to be stuck in that line forever, then I will stop. But if I don't, even if I don't know, if I think maybe I might have time or I might not have time, I'm not going to risk being late to work. You're just not going to have my business.
Well, I think too, like as we think about all these different pieces, as we talk here on Coffee Experts Club, I think it's important to realize this is a systemic thing, right? Like right now, we're talking about car times, and it's if you're not careful, you can begin to focus on one thing without realizing there's a chain of it. But I think the thing to keep in mind is, like Ben, you referenced the ethos of roasters was speed, service, strength. Something simple. Keep it in front of your kids. Make sure they understand these are the pillars that your business is built on and why it's important. But the reason, like you said, Ben, the reason why we want to rush speed, not rush it, but make sure that we know exactly where we're performing at speed is because we want to serve the client best or the customer best, the guest best, as we came to call them. We want to serve them well and we want to give them a good product and we want to keep them moving. But the whole purpose behind that for us as a company is also that's how we become more profitable because the more cars we get through the drive per hour, the more profitable our hours become, which enable us to do cool things. But I do think also from a big picture systemic issue of thinking through things, I think that we also are going to lead to how do we drive more profitable hours through short, like low times, right? And we've talked
Mhm.
about that in previous shows of doing things like happy hours where we're going to drive volume at this stand. We have to know that the ethos is in place because if we drive 80 cars at that stand this next hour, man, we better make sure that they can get through the stand in that hour or two. Otherwise, we're going to have a bunch of pissed off people that we did a happy hour that we couldn't even fulfill on because we're not able to drive enough volume. So I think that like
Yep.
understanding and make sure we're establishing with our people, this is a pillar and there is a purpose behind it. And the purpose is profitability ultimately for the business so that we all keep our jobs. We also don't want to create a terrible customer experience as we try and drive profitability to the hour because the principle isn't being held, which is speed. We got to do it
Mhm.
fast.
Mhm. No, it's true. And if you and think of how much more profitable your your peak hours could be if you're getting, even 30% more cars through that hour. I mean, because every coffee shop I don't know is that like my peak hours are my like 7:30 a.m. to like 11:30 a.m. Like that's peak work, that's peak school. That's when you get most customers. That's everybody's morning coffee. How do I capitalize on those hours? If your drive-through is packed with cars, you can't really capitalize anymore because you've got, a queue line. But if I can move those cars through that queue line at twice the speed, well, then I can keep packing more cars in. So if you want to double your hour, essentially you need to double the amount of cars that are able to get through your line in the hour. The only way to do that is with speed.
It's good. And it doesn't matter really where you start. Modestly, we started with, timing ourselves on little kitchen timers and using,
Yep.
to run orders. And there's some coffee shops that aren't running orders and they're still doing great. But I highly recommend getting out in that line to help with speed. And we would run in-house orders and outside orders, a pen and a Sharpie to know which one was which. And person on the bar would be a quick thinker, but even started from there, started modest, the evolution, you'll figure out what steps you need to take because you'll suddenly have all these metrics to track, which creates nice actionable items for you as a leader to put in place and test.
Yep.
Well, that's good. Well, obviously we evolved to a place and we do now, we recommend it as people are building new stores is to think through a timing system. Maybe, not everybody's going to want to talk to a box, right? Like the whole talk to a box with headphones, like some people are into that. Some people are not into it. It just depends on the brand. We service both, as we consult with different companies and we give them recommendations based on the culture of what they want to establish, in their business. Not everybody likes ordering through, an external box, but I will say, like Drew was saying, putting somebody in the drive to work down your line helps with speed, helps dial it in. But I will say putting in there was a brand out there that we began, as our go-to that was called Zoom timers. And it wasn't an expensive outlay, a few $1,000 maybe. But the nice thing about it is it gave you a very clear time of how long people are sitting in your drive and waiting, based upon their ordering. And the other thing that it did that was great. And there's a big screen and it's telling you numbers and it's counting it down and it's telling you how you've lined out the last set of cars. It also gives Ben, as the operator, the ability to remote into that and see how the stores are performing, so that he can, give some coaching commentary to the managers. But also it came to the spot too, where we're able to get stores to compete.
Yep.
I mean, I think that was one of the best things, right? Because I think we've gone through different iterations, especially in the roasters days, but even as we've been working with clients over the last decade, I think that we see different things that work and different things that don't work. Typically jumping all over somebody because their car times are bad, that's not the best way to get motivation, right? Looking out on them. And we went through that season where, Shannon or the crew would come through and she would just like be super on top of like car times and it would be intense and it would be intimidating and the baristas wasn't a good feeling. And I felt like it didn't always create the best energy. But I think when we got to the Zoom timers, the nice thing is about when you gamify it, when maybe you motivate people by it, especially when you can pit stores against each other, hey, looks like Jimmy's out in front. Like then you stir up this like camaraderie amongst team of, hey, we can get that faster. Hey, we can do better at that. And then if you'll do some sort of rewards, silly rewards, it doesn't always have to be monetary, but even just like some kind of moniker of like fastest car times the month, and they can get proud of that and kind of brag about it and like jab each other, in fun about it. I think you're creating a good culture for your people and getting the result that you want because you're making it fun. And I think that's important.
Yeah, there was a point where we some of the shops had their time up and they had other shops of the same caliber next to them. So they could literally, while they're in those peak shifts, be like, oh, we're faster than them right now. We're faster than them right now.
Yep.
So, and that was really cool. And yeah, exactly what you said. We haven't mentioned it a ton, but having those checklists and check-ins with the managers, we could literally pull up, an average of your month. Hey, your monthly average for your car times is like, looks like it's a minute 25 per car. Fan freaking tastic. Good job. Or it looks like, in the evenings, your average is like 4 minutes a car. Is that because you don't have any cars? Or is that because, you've only got one person working the last couple hours and it's just killing your car times? Let's look at these. So the really cool thing about those Zoom timers is it gives you that average, but it also gave us like a detailed breakdown of per car. So we could say, well, the nights are really slow car times. So we could pull up every car and say, oh, it's because they only had 3 cars that hour, or they only had, 3 cars in the last 30 minutes. So sure, the baristas doing what we want them to do. They're talking to them, creating a relationship, seeing how their day is going. That's perfectly fine. But if you have, 60 cars an hour, and you're doing 3-minute car times. Well, yeah, that's not even going to happen.
Right.
And if you're not at the point where you want to install, we have a client that just, wasn't ready to install it in all their locations, but they have a running system in place that's hooked to their POS. And what we've seen them doing recently is, and we advocate for, tracking metrics week over week. We have a scorecard, we track various things. One of the things they started tracking was not just, week over week sales, but the percentage of orders that came in through their running system. And so they're tracking, X amount of stores, seeing, if we start at 15% of the orders are coming through our running system, and then suddenly the stores are at 20% and 25%, where you're going to see those sales go up too, which is what they were noticing too. And the stores that have a higher percentage of, drive-through orders come through, or translated, somebody's out there running orders, a higher percentage of that, the more your weekly sales have a potential to be.
Go and watch what the big dogs do. There's a McDonald's down the street from us. If you go by there at 12:30 in the afternoon, what are they doing? That McDonald's has 2 drive-through lanes, 2 speakers, and has people running outside because they know there's a bunch of high school kids who are coming down. They've only got 30 minutes for lunch. You got to get them in and out as fast as possible. So it's like, if McDonald's is concerned about speed so much that they have speaker systems and people out running, if your profitability is important to you, maybe take a glimpse at what McDonald's is doing to see if you can copy some of that.
I think too, never underemphasizing the fact that your kids need you to coach them. You know what I mean? Like if you leave it to your kids running your stands to run your stands, they're going to run it the way they want to run it. You know what I mean? Which is probably not work hard, not give out a bunch of energy. You know what I mean? Just like shoot the shit and take it like super like mellow and at whatever pace they want. Like our baristas need training. They need us to train them, and they need to see a vision for the training. It can't just be because, Drew or I want to make more money down at Coffee de los Mayas, and that's why we're pushing you to drive your lines faster or harder. It's like, no. I know for us down at Coffee de los Mayas, we incentivize our people by saying, hey, here's your goal for the month. If you can this week do this much better than we did last week, we're going to rev share a percentage of those dollars with you. So it's not just putting money in our pockets, it's putting money back in your pockets. And we don't want it to be a bad customer experience. It isn't like, wait, ma'am, thank you, ma'am. Like we're just putting you out the door. Like we're like trying to move them through, it's the spot where we're like, no, have the conversation, recognize the customer, have a good exchange, and then make quick coffee so that as the drink comes out the window, it's the natural thing for them to move on. You know what I mean? But if like you take forever to make a drink, then you're right. Your customer is going to talk your face off for the next 10 minutes because you're not making the drink fast enough. And they think that you want to have a conversation. But anybody that's working windows and anybody that's been on bar, like you don't want to get stuck in that window for that long. Like it's a happy exchange. It's a fun exchange. It's a good exchange. It's a feel good. It's an acknowledge your customer. It's make them feel good, give them a good day and get them on the road because ultimately they probably have somewhere to be too. So it's actually, you're serving the customer need. You're serving the barista need, right? Of not getting stuck in a window in a conversation that gets awkward. And then also it's serving the company at a whole, which is going to put money back in your pocket. So really taking the opportunity to educate your barista on what are we trying to do? Because if you just come in and try and like strong arm, hey, you've got to be underneath 2 minutes. Hey, you've got like it. And you're like coming down hard on them or making them anxious when you walk in and start talking about car times. That's not a good energy. And they're going to take that bad energy to your customers and your customers are going to get a bad experience, So helping your baristas realizing these are kids, you're educating them, help them understand what you're trying to get to because they're smart. Otherwise you wouldn't have hired them or they probably shouldn't be working for you, right? If they're not able to get on board, that's probably a good indication of they need to be cut loose if they're too slow. Coffee isn't an industry you can be slow in, not if you want to be profitable, not if you want to make it.
And do you think about the customer's time as part of the price that they're paying for that drink? And we talk about giving them their time back, considering their time. But if I'm in a line with 15 cars in front of me and I have to wait, 30 minutes, I feel like my drink is so much more expensive than if I wait, 12 minutes or 15 minutes, even though 15 minutes is quite a wait. It's not quite 30 minutes. And that can directly translate into tips for your barista because I'm like, whoa, these kids were moving so fast. I barely had time to put my car, in park before it had to roll forward again. I feel more generous to tip those baristas. So you're just giving back time to the customer that can translate to tipping the baristas, which was a good selling point for our kids to get faster too. And it translated to real tips for them.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Putting them in the perspective of the customers is what really helps and how it directly affects them as an employee, as a barista, because I use those terms whenever I trained every new barista. It was like, just think if this car took 2 minutes, just think if you're number 15 in line, how long is your going to be? That's 30 minutes, like 30 minutes to get a cup of coffee. Nothing's worth waiting in line for 30 minutes. It's the best coffee I've ever had in my life. I'm not waiting 30 minutes for it. Get out of here with that. So trying to put it in perspective. I know we'd get the old kitchen timer, and I remember standing off bar, and I'd let the baristas work, and I'd time them, and then I'd be like, "Okay, how do you guys think you did?" And they're like, "Wow, we were fast today." I was like, "That took 2.5 minutes actually." And you don't know you're slow until somebody says, "Actually, this is how long you're taking." Then they can calibrate. Okay, I could probably do this faster. I could probably multitask and talk to the customer while I'm ringing them up instead of talking to them and then ringing them up. Or maybe I could ring them up and be moving the cup from my other barista's end of the bar to this end of the bar. And you start thinking about these things with your baristas and start planning them out. And the only reason any of that happens is if you actually stand back and say, okay, how long did that take you? It felt fast, but it sure wasn't if you're number 15 in line.
Oh man, I think it's so important. So important to ask ourselves, why do we do what we do? And do our team understand why we do what we do? And to realize that it's not just to put more money in your pocket. They already think you're killing it as an owner. So like, just realize that your kids think that you're killing it, even though you probably aren't killing it, right? Like you probably are like struggling to make it by, or if you're in location number 1 or 2 still, you're like, just thinking, dear God, if I could just get off the bar. Or your kids don't think it through that way. So if you can reposition it and you can help them understand how it's going to benefit them, how it's going to benefit the customer, and then ultimately it benefits you as well, all you've done is create a system that's replicable, and you've educated your people, and you've got to the goal that you want. So I know we've been talking about it a lot, especially lately, about just profitability. This is the way that you increase profitability, right? Drive more volume, turn more cars, and make sure it's a good experience so those people come back. And part of that's car timers. So boys, it's a good session today. I think it's a good one. If you're listening up and your stand is struggling with time, maybe this is something you refer people to. Hey, well, you guys can give this a listen. Push this out to your team. Let them give a listen. Let them think through these. I think it helps when it's not just you as the talking head up in front, but you can say, hey, these are experts that are consulting dozens of clients every single month, and they're telling you the same thing I've been telling you. So thank you for tuning in. Coffee Experts, we appreciate you, Drew and Ben. Thank you guys for being here. You guys have a good day.
We'll see you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.